Peter, we still have your back here, baby.
No, Peter's not there. Oh, he's here.
He's there. He's there.
Hi, Peter.
I don't know, Peter. We
Peter
love you,
needs to
but we
move
can't
his
get rid of
camera.
you. You better be careful. You can't get rid of. Well, you'll stay with us. We'll minimize you. All right. All right, guys. So, beginning on page 163, I want you to review this for next class about non-recourse deductions. Page 163 and 164, the next few pages talk about targeted allocations. And targeted allocations are something, if you read the material, essentially say partners who aren't engaging in partnerships for tax motivated reasons, they don't care about capital accounts. What they care about are their economic state. And targeted allocations say, you know what? We're going to not have the cash follow the allocation, but the other way around. Meaning, we're going to devise a partnership agreement that essentially says whoever gets allocated cash under the partnership agreement, we're going to change their capital account accordingly, as opposed to having the capital account dictate what you're entitled to, saying once you get a cash distribution or you're entitled to certain cash, that's going to dictate your capital account. Sort of turning it upside down, saying whatever you're entitled to, hey, voila, magic wand, that's going to be your capital account. And you can read this for yourself. There's some controversy surrounding whether or not that's bona fide. There's commentators who argue both ways, and supposedly at some point the Treasury Department is going to take a position on this. But for now, my point is, I can't hold you accountable because it's still up in the air. You should read this because there is a movement afoot about targeted capital accounts, but it's still an open-ended question. Let's do this. Let's move on to chapter 5. And partnership allocations, we're going to continue with what are called income shifting safeguards. Okay? Income shifting safeguards. And when you contribute property, right? When you contribute property, there's a question whether or not the contributed property, we know under Lucas v. Earl that we got to avoid assignment of income and assignment of deductions to the wrong players. That if you contribute appreciated property to a partnership, you should be tagged with the gain. Okay? And conversely, if you contribute property with an embedded loss, you should get the loss. That should not be something shared between and among players. Okay? That there should be this notion of that the person who contributed it should be the one responsible. And that's reflected in Code Section 704C1. Okay? Code Section 704C1, this notion of that the contributing partner should be responsible for the gain and loss. And there's 3 different methods for all of this. We're going to see. This is spelled out on page 171. There's the so-called traditional method. There's the traditional method with curative allocations, and the so-called remedial method. Okay? So there's 3 different methods associated with contributed property. And taxpayers are at liberty. Taxpayers are at liberty choosing which method they want. Okay? They are at liberty, and they can do so on a property-by-property basis. Okay? They can do so on a property-by-property basis. There is a de minimis rule spelled out on page 172. There's a de minimis rule spelled out. And the de minimis rule says that in certain instances, you don't have to use special allocations. Okay? You do not need to use, if not special allocations, you don't need to use one of these 3 methods. Essentially, you can ignore utilization of these methods. Okay, so the authors start off with an introduction saying the code is very aware that taxpayers might be apt to play games with contributed property. They introduce us to these three different methods to handling it. And then they say that with respect to contributed property, essentially there's two different occasions in which this concern will arise. Two major time periods, chronologies. One is if the property is sold. Okay, if the property is sold, that's going to be concern number one. And concern number two, aside from the property being sold, if the property is depreciated. Okay, two different concerns. One is if the property is sold, and the other is with respect to depreciation. Okay? Say it loudly.
That's the concern with the three methods?
The three methods, right? That's what the Treasury regulations, right, are designed to look at those three different instances. And the regulations, and guys, what can I tell you? If you read the code section, you ain't gonna get this. If you don't go through the painstaking task of reading the regulations, you're gonna be a lost ship foundering on the horizon. All right, you've got to read the regulations. Did I say that? Yes, I did. I've said it before. There's no shortcut. So on page 173, the authors cite you to these different regulations. They cite you to examples. And each of these regulations trace one of these methods. The traditional method, the traditional method with curative allocations, and the remedial method. Okay? And we're going to see how these operate, these three different methods operate. The problem with the traditional method, as spelled out on page 174, it suffers from a deficit. It suffers from what's called a ceiling rule, that generally taxpayers cannot be allocated. Let me start with a general proposition. Whoever is the non-contributing partner should be allocated whatever the book gain or loss is. Let me repeat that. The non-contributing partner should be allocated whatever the book gain or loss is. But sometimes the non-contributing partner has a book gain or loss, but the tax gain or loss does not equal the book gain or loss, so there's a ceiling, and the non-contributing partner can't get what they deserve. I'll repeat, in certain instances, the goal line here is to give the non-contributing partner what they deserve in terms of the tax consequences. And sometimes, because of the limitations with the taxable gain or loss, the non-contributing partner cannot get what he or she deserves. Okay? So bear that in mind, that the non-contributing partner may not be able to achieve what he or she should get. Now, how do we fix this? How do we fix the ceiling rule? And one of the ways to do it is that we can use the traditional method with curative allocations. And if you look at the bottom of page 175, top of 176, it says, a curative allocation is an allocation made solely for tax purposes that differs from the partnership's allocation of corresponding book items. As such, a curative allocation has no economic effect and is not reflected in the partner's capital account. And what you'll see is, if you look at the bottom of page 176, is you look at taxpayer A and B, and you look at the stock tax gain and book gain, and you'll notice that the book gain is the same, but the tax gain is allocated to take into account the ceiling rule, all right? And you have to read this to see why, but I'm just pulling that to your attention. I have that in red, that the curative allocation is at the level of the stock tax gain and book gain. The remedial method is kind of neat, because the remedial method, you can literally pull numbers out of thin air, and where the ceiling rule applies, you pull numbers out of thin air, and you give whatever number is appropriate to the non-contributing partner. Guess what? You give an exact offsetting amount to the contributing partner. So there's symmetry. Okay, in this instance, there's symmetry. So with the traditional method with curative allocations, you don't pull numbers out of thin air. You got to wait for events to happen, and when those events happen, then you can put your curative allocations into motion. The remedial allocation, you're not patient and you're impatient. You just make it happen. And for purposes of computing gains and losses, you literally can pull these numbers out of thin air, as long as whatever you do for one side of the ledger, you do the exact opposite to the other side, okay? So the authors point out that taxpayers, depending on their tax brackets, might choose to or try to play some allocation games here. And the regulations warn that if these allocations are done purely for tax minimization purposes, they will be considered abusive and they run the risk of being ignored. So just be careful that if you come up with a creative solution, it may be too creative and it may not carry weight with the IRS. So what's the takeaway here, guys? That with contributed property, your antenna has to go up. Why does it have to go up? Because you don't have the luxury. Why is this here in this book, in this place? Because you just learned in the prior chapter that you can allocate gains any way you want, right? We had this discussion, right, Elizabeth? You said so, but then Jonah pointed out you don't have the complete luxury, and as Ken added, right, at the beginning of class, you need substantial economic effect. But if you do, you can go where you want with these special allocations, right? And then the earlier part of the class, we even learned you don't even need substantial economic effect, because if you have a minimum gain, you can have non-economic losses being allocated, right? But we're learning here, take a step back, that this is not true with contributed property. You do not have the luxury of allocating gains and losses as you please, right? There are very special rules and limitations with contributed property. And that's what these rules pertain to, and they come in three flavors, like I said. Traditional with curative allocations, and then just remedial. And you're gonna see, we're gonna go through several examples, so if you're, again, we're gonna go through examples, but where you're gonna get really nice examples is nicer perhaps than the ones I review with you. The regulations, thank you, Diva. You read my mind, okay? In the regulations, okay? The authors take a little break on page 178. They point out, and this is not going to come as a shock to anyone in this room, that when you contribute property to a partnership, that the taint of the character of that property stays with that property. Okay, let me repeat. Under Code Section 724, this could have been in Chapter 1, perhaps, or Chapter 2 with partnership formations, but they talk about it in this context, that you can't use a partnership to convert property into more tax-efficient property. So guess what? Your accounts receivable stays accounts receivable. Your inventory stays inventory. Even if in the hands of the partnership it isn't inventory, that inventory taint stays with the partnership for 5 years. And your capital losses stay capital losses. The built-in capital losses for 5 years as well. So what Code Section 724 does not permit you to do is to wash property. You can't wash property through a partnership and achieve your objective. can't wash property through a partnership and achieve your objective. All right, so what I want to do is, so with respect to contributed property, we said there's sale or exchange, and then there's also depreciation. What I'd like to do on page 188, let's talk about sale or exchange. That's reflected in problem 1. Problem 2 deals with depreciation. We're not going to look at problem 2. I just want to be careful and sensitive to the clock. And problem 3 deals with code section 724. So I just want to make sure we get through problem 1 and 3, and if time permits, we'll do problem 2, but if time doesn't permit, that's the first thing we'll do at the beginning of next class. So let's do problem 1, because I think it will be useful even in discussing depreciation. Problem 1 deals with 3 equal partners. A contributes receivables, okay, just basis fair market value of 10. B, real estate contributes lots held primarily for sale, right? Those are inventory, with a built-in gain of 5. An investor contributes land that has an embedded loss of 10,000. Everyone agree? Unless otherwise stated, and I point out, the partnership is not a deal. It's not a deal. Okay? So it's holding it as investment. All the contributed assets have been held long-term by the partners. Part of the contribution in the traditional method of allocation is applied with respect to all property. Okay? What tax consequences to the following alternate transaction? What happens if the partnership, I stand corrected, problem 1 actually deals with 724, but that's okay. So, what happens if the accounts receivable are sold for 10,000? Who gets tagged with that gain? A gets tagged with that gain, okay? Regulation 704-3B. All 10,000 of the gain is allocated to A. There is no book gain, okay? There's no capital account increase. And what's the character of that income? It's all ordinary income, code section 724D. Okay? Let me repeat. Again, A's going to get tagged with $10,000 ordinary income. The character is going to be preserved as ordinary, 724. What happens in problem B? Partnership sells the lots contributed for $10,600. Are they going to be treated as ordinary income or capital gains, guys?
Well, B gets 5,000.
Let's not compute the gain. What's the character first?
Capital.
No, because the taint remains under
It's
724D2.
inventory. Yeah.
Okay, it stays inventory in the hands of the partnership for 5 years, right? So 724D2 and 724B is going to be treated, right? And what happens, what is the book gain here? The book gain in problem B,
600.
$600, right? Everyone agree? The partnership on its books entered this property for $10,000, but now appreciated $10,600, right? So the book gain is $600, right? So with respect to A, B, and C,
I have a question.
I'm listening.
So if this was kept for 5 years and then sold, it
Okay.
would be capital gain to the partnership, the
Yeah.
$600, but it would still be ordinary income to the partner.
No,
Oh,
it loses its taint after 5
or
years.
even to the partner.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So the book gain is $200 to each, right? And who contributed this property? B, right? So who should be taxed? Give the non-contributing partner, what's the total taxable gain here, guys? What's the taxable gain here? The taxable gain is 5,600, right? Because isn't the adjusted basis under code section 723 in the hands of the partnership $5,000? And it's sold for $10,600, code section 1001, the gain here is 5,600, right? How's that 5,600 divvied up? Give the non-contributing partners, right, their gain, right, everyone agree? The non-contributing partners, their gain. And how much would be allocated to the contributing partner? $5,200, right? Everyone agree? Good exam question, easy, right? You'd be, thank God he asked this question so easy. Right? B would be tagged with 5,200 again, right? Everyone see that, right? Because B should be. If B had contributed cash and the partnership had bought the property, it would only have been $600 worth of taxable gain. So B's the culprit here. B should be tagged with the 5,200. Question C. Partnership sells the lot contributed by B for $9,100. So what I mean by tax is what outside basis or inside basis, the T. Outside basis, right? And that's the T. Right? Outside basis. And B represents the capital account of these partners, right? And how we're going to allocate it. Okay? Book gain or loss here?
Loss.
Loss of how much?
900.
900. Everyone agree? Everyone suffered a $300 loss. Is there a tax gain or loss here?
Loss.
Tax gain or loss?
Oh, sorry, gain. 4,100.
Tax gain of 4,100. Can we give the non-contributing partners the loss they deserve, guys? They suffered, poor souls. But can we give them a loss? No. It goes to the ceiling room. So what gain do they have? They have zero gain. Who gets tagged with the 4,100? B. Right?
The
B.
partners don't get the losses? I mean,
They can't. There's only a taxable gain. Got it?
I'm not sure, but
Think about
I'll
it.
let
But
you know.
this is important. And this, guys, again, I'm saying this because I want you to succeed. You will see this on the exam. Okay? This is a very common mistake practitioners make. Not you, others.
so there's a book loss, but the
Absolutely.
partners cannot, it does not affect their capital accounts?
Well, it does. Their capital accounts only went down by $300.
Okay. Okay.
They all suffered, but they didn't get the tax loss because there is no tax loss.
They didn't contribute, right?
Oh, because B has to be tagged with the gain. Well, let's look at C, except they use the remedial method of allocation. Okay? So now they're going to use the remedial method of allocation. Okay? What's going to happen here? Let's go through. We know the book loss, right? Everyone agree? Everyone agree? And we know the tax gain, right? Under the remedial method, what's gonna happen? Notice, I'm gonna pick numbers out of the air. What am I gonna do with those numbers I pick out of the air?
You're gonna make sure that the other partners have no losses? The other two partners?
Who are the other two partners?
I forget their names.
A and C.
A and C, okay.
Are not gonna have losses?
I mean, aren't
They
you gonna,
suffered, these poor souls. Give them their losses.
then where's the remedy?
Stick it to B. He's the one who caused the problem.
Oh, give him all the losses, okay.
No, give him the gains. And what I mean by that is, C deserves $300 worth of losses, right? Everyone agree? Tax losses. But we just created 600,000 of losses out of thin air. Everyone agree? What are we gonna do about that?
Adjust it with B.
We're gonna give B how much? We have 4,100
minus,
Reba plus 600. He's going to get tagged. We got to, the government doesn't want to lose money. We just created 600,000 of losses, or $600 worth of losses. We have to create $600 worth of gains to equal the ledger. So B's going to be tagged with.
4,700, yeah.
But you know what? That's not a bad outcome, the 4,700, because truth be told, B gets tagged with 4,700. He's not, but remember, his original gain was 5,000, right? Everyone agree? That originally he contributed property worth 10 with a basis of 5, and he suffered $300 worth of economic losses, right, during the partnership ownership of this property. He should be tagged with $4,700 worth of gain. It's not, we're not penalizing B by going through the remedial method. We're actually putting the partners where they belong. In theory, the Treasury regulations could say that the traditional method makes absolutely no sense, and that the Treasury regulations could have played a much harsher role and demanded that all taxpayers be on the remedial method. Okay, guys? What do you think about it?
So now the tax capital is 300 for A and C?
I don't know, say your words
I'm
again?
sorry, the tax capital is negative 300 for A and C?
Well, they reduce their outside basis by $300.
This is as a reduction of
Yeah,
the.
I'm gonna say they reduce their outside basis. I don't know what their outside basis is, but it would just so you know, this is, say your outside basis gets reduced by 300. I don't know what their outside basis is. Right, guys? I mean, I'll just use C by example. If this were a 721 transaction, if you recall, C's outside basis started at 20,000, so C's outside basis now, Anna, would be 19,700. All right, everyone getting a sense? We got the traditional method, and again, why are these rules here? Why are they on? Because you're not allowed special allocations with respect to contributed property. You've got to play by these rules. Where's their flexibility here? With one of these three methods, you get to choose, but you don't have the flexibility to allocate gains and losses at your discretion. Question 8. We're going to change the patch. Now it's a real estate dealer, sells the land contributed by C for $17,000. So is there a book gain or loss if the property is sold for $17,000?
Gain.
Okay? Okay, and it's, I agree, but it's gain, how is that going to be allocated? That's $7,000 worth of gain. Well, it's book gain, and they agreed to share all book gains equally, right?
Yes.
So what did their capital accounts go up by $2,333 apiece? I don't know what I just did. Sorry. Oh, I just wanted to minimize you. Okay. All right. So their capital accounts go up by that, right? Because that represents the book gain. Everyone agree? The partnership, in the partnership's hands, this property went up by 7,000, right? And that represents a book gain. Is there a tax gain or tax loss here, guys?
Loss.
Loss of how much?
3.
3,000, right? Because they sold it for 17. Their basis, the partnership basis is 20. So what happens is the $3,000 loss. Who should be allocated that loss?
B. Oh, C.
C, right? Because
Yeah.
C is the one who brought that loss to the table, right? What is C? Okay, I'm sorry. You're right. C is allocated that loss, right? What is the character of that loss? Capital, right? Because it's a 5-year tink, right? This is a built-in capital loss, and code section 724C says that that must be maintain a capital loss. Okay. Now, guess what? Could we do a remedial allocation if we wanted it in problem A? Doesn't ask us that. I don't think it did. But suppose in E we did a remedial allocation. What would we do? Well, wouldn't we have to tag these guys, right? Remedially, wouldn't they have to get this, right? We would tag them with these, an equivalent, right? And then, what would happen here if they got tagged with the equivalent gain? Well, be able to subtract 467, right? So the total losses here would be 7,667, which makes sense when you look at that would be the loss that would be allocated, right? Because when you look at what he brought to the table and taking into account his gain, the total equals $10,000. Think about it. Think about it. I'm going to leave you with some thoughts here. You're going to have to think about it. He brought the property, right? He brought a total of $10,000 worth of losses, right? But now the property, he was entitled to 1/3 of the depreciation of 2,000. So if you take into account that he had an embedded loss of 10,000, and in the partnership hands, his portion appreciated by $2,333, then he should be able to get a loss of 7,667, right? Think about it. Question F. Let's think about it. Same as E, except the property, the sale is for 7,000. So don't say your answers. Write down the tax and book. What should be the tax and fill out the accounts, guys. Okay, with respect to question F, what is the character of the loss, first of all? How much is the total loss, guys? 13,000.
13,
Everyone
yeah.
agree? $13,000 of loss. How much is tainted capital loss?
10.
10, right? Because that's the pre-contribution capital loss. Anything above the pre-contribution capital loss is treated as ordinary loss because now it's a dealer, right? Everyone agree? In problem E, it says it's a dealer. So problem F continues that it's a dealer. So the first 10,000 is a capital loss. And the other 3, right, is an ordinary loss. Now, how is this loss split by the partners for book purposes? Right? It's a $3,000 loss, right? So they each suffered economically in the hands of the partnership by $1,000. Agreed? But what was the overall loss we agreed?
10. Oh, 13.
13. We can give the non-contributing partners, right? That's A, B, and C, right? The non-contributing partners here, A, B, and C, are A and B. They can be allocated their $1,000 of ordinary losses, right? So they're made whole. They get their losses they deserve. And who's going to get the balance, or $11,000 worth of losses? C. And it's going to be 10,000 of capital loss, 1,000 of ordinary loss, right?
Shouldn't it be 12? Or
Isn't
C?
the total loss 13?
13, yeah.
So you can't give them more. There's 1, 1, 11. Put 13.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You get to invoke the 8 o'clock rule.
Yeah.
All right? We're good? So keep in mind, guys, you always have to look at the book and tax. The book and tax, and allocate the book the way the partners economically agree to bear the income and losses, and the tax based on these special rules under 704C. Question T. What results in C above? If the recovery period for the building is 20 years, and the partnership elects the remedial method, I'm looking at the wrong G. G, would the result in any of the above transactions change the sales occurred 6 years after the partnership, after the property was contributed? And what the authors point out is that under 724B and 724C, after 5 years, the taint disappears, right? The inventory taint and the capital loss taint disappears. So in B and C, it would change the character. It would change the character in B and C to be capital, and the losses in E and F would be ordinary. I repeat, in problem G, the gains and losses in B and C would be capital, and in E and F, they would be ordinary. Okay? So everyone's got to focus on problem 1. Over the weekend or over this week, you got to make sure you understand problem 1. Why? Because on exam, I'll ask if contributed property is sold at a gain or loss, what are the tax consequences to the partners, right? Because does this come up in practice? Absolutely, right? So fair game for exam purposes, that this is one of those problems you got to know, just like the contribution problem. In problem 3, let's skip problem 3, we'll come back to 2, time permitting. A and B, both dealers in real estate, find a parcel to purchase for $100,000 as an investment. I have the word dealers circled in red, okay? Because if they're dealers, any property they own, right, it's going to be inventory in their hands. Agreed? So if they buy property and they're dealers, it's going to be inventory. They believe it can be sold in 2 years for $200,000. They either buy it and the land is tenants in common for $100,000 and jointly contributed to a partnership, or they can contribute $50,000 each to an equal partnership, and they buy the land. How should they structure the transaction? Should they buy it or should the partnership buy it? And if you say the partnership, why? If the partnership buys it, they avoid the application of code section 724B, right? So it will not have the inventory taint, which would be carried on for 5 years. So if the partnership buys it, better for the partnership to buy it, right? Because they're dealers, the partnership is not dealers.
Isn't that like tax evasion or whatever?
No, that's just good
It's
tax
okay?
planning. I think that's fine.
Okay.
Can you repeat it one more time, Professor?
Is that the partnership should buy it, they should not buy it. Because if they buy it, it's inventory in their hands, and when they contribute it, it takes on the 72014. Right? They take on that 72014. Okay, and question B. So they rather get capital gains than ordinary income, guys, bottom line. And by having the partnership purchase it, they will yield capital gains. They will not be saddled with ordinary income. Linda?
Why not buying it and just use the exclusive fee, whatever?
Why not?
Use it as
Who
an extension
buys?
or something? Them individually.
So why, what exclusion? Code section 121 doesn't apply. This is not a personal residence. Right? There's no exclusion. They get tagged from the first dollar. Okay. Assume AB partnership purchased the land for $100,000 in year 1 and appreciated to $200,000 at the beginning of year 3. Okay? So they purchased the land for $100,000 in year 1, appreciates to $200,000 by the beginning of year 3. Okay? At that point, C wants to join the partnership by contributing $100,000 to be used by the partnership to improve the land and sell it. We have tax and book, tax and book, tax and book. The partners believe they can sell the land for $450. What tax results in book purposes if the partnership sells the improved parcel for $450 and allocates the gain to reflect the appreciation at the time of C's entry into the partnership? Okay. Now, with respect to A and B, what were their tax bases? Right? Is it 50,000? Right? And then, although their initial book account was 50,000 as well, right? Their capital account originally, when a new partner comes in, they can revalue, right? They can revalue the property, and now it's worth 200,000 or 100,000 apiece. And what is C going to contribute? $100,000 of cash. Everyone agree? I'm sorry?
This is for after the joining of the C.
Yeah, this is after C joins, right? So everyone sees where this comes from. And what happens with the building itself? The inside basis of fair market value. Okay? That for tax purposes, the building, right, the land starts off with a $100,000 basis, right? and starts off worth 100,000. But then we're told that 2 years later, it's worth 200,000. So it apparently went up by 100,000. Plus, they're going to make $100,000 worth of improvements, right? So the book account goes up to 300,000, right? So when he joins, it's worth 200,000, and they're going to make $100,000 of improvements. Does that cause the inside basis to go up? Sure. Why? Code section 1016, right? That if you make improvements to property, your basis goes up. Everyone agree? And, okay.
Why is the second one, why the basis is increased by 100?
This is when a new partner comes in, you're going to want the property's worth 200,000, so you get to adjust your books accordingly.
Okay, so you're adding 100
Okay? And now the property's being sold for 450, right?
Yep.
Is there any book gain on this land?
Yeah,
Yes.
150.
It's being sold for 450, right? So for book purposes, there's 150,000 a gain, and for tax purposes, there's 250 a gain. Everyone agree? Now, under principles of 704, C, remember, was the partnership property contributed property, guys? Was the partnership property contributed property? No. Everyone agree? It was not contributed property. Everyone agree? It was owned by the partnership the entire time. But isn't it the equivalent of contributed property, right? Because you have a new partner entering, right? So it's as if A and B contributed the property with appreciation, right? At the time C came along, the property had already appreciated by 100,000. Agreed? Everyone agree? So they didn't contribute the property, but under principles of 704C, and the regulations enumerate this, who should be tagged with the first $100,000 a gain, guys?
A and B.
A and B, right? A and B should be tagged with the first $50,000 of gain, and the regulations make clear they are tagged with the first 50,000. And with the book gain of 150,
50 each.
equally. And then, given that we each one should be tagged. So the gain here, would, in this case, would be to A and B would be $100,000 a piece, right? And to C, 50,000, right? Everyone agree? And that makes sense when all the dust settles. In your book, they refer to this as the reverse principles of code section 704C, because again, A and B are not contributing property, but the principles of 704C do apply in this context, and you get a new partner. And question B and C, you see it says that they elect to use a reverse seal. In my opinion, they don't have a choice here. So I don't know what the authors are referring to. That regulatory site, you have to use the reverse allocation principles. So my answer to B and C, you come up with the same answer. For my purposes, you would have the identical answers here. So for your notes, it's the, you see that regulatory site? the reverse 704C allocation, I will just call to your attention, there's examples in your regulations that get you to the same outcome. Regulation 704-1B5, example 14, 1 little I, and example 14, 2 little I. I'll repeat, 704-1B5, example 14, 1 little I, and example 14, 2 little I, gives you exactly what we're referring to here. Question D. Question D raises a question where it says, what results of a sale of the land for $450,000? The capital accounts of the partners are not adjusted when C joins the partnership. An agreement does not include any special allocations to reflect the built-in gain at the time that C becomes a partner. And the author's point here, call this to your attention, and I don't want to belabor this because, in my opinion, this is not going to come up too often in your practice. So they do not adjust anything here. And C, so let's put it this way. A and B, if you're A and B, are you going to insist your capital accounts get adjusted to reflect the fair market value of the property? It says, when C joins, the agreement does not include any special allocations to reflect the built-in gain at the time C became a partner. So essentially, notice that we're not changing the capital accounts, and what would happen here is that the property was subsequently sold for $450, right? There would be a book gain of $250. That would stay the same. In other words, let me just point out that the tax basis would go up by an improvement to 200, but here it did not adjust. There's no adjustment in the books to reflect the fact that when C came aboard, there's no adjustment. That's what the authors are suggesting here. So when the property sold for $450, there's a gain of $250, and at the private, and there's a likewise gain of $250. And if they're going to split that gain for book purposes evenly, they're going to split that gain for evenly, what is happening here is that C is getting a disproportionate amount that C did not deserve, okay? C is getting entitled to $183, right? And notice before, C was only entitled to $150, right? And these guys are giving up money, right? And what the authors are raising, and this is spelled out in the regulations, that if for some reason there is not an adjustment when you have a new partner and your capital accounts don't accurately reflect your economic state, then there's probably another agenda going on here, that the money's going to C. C may be a child, for example, of A and B, and A and B are strategically trying to plant C with more money and giving C a de facto gift. Or maybe A and B are scratching their chins and saying, well, we're going to pay you a salary, we're going to give you money, and it's going to come in the form of a capital gain rather than ordinary income. In other words, what I'm saying is, it's not clear, but there's some other agenda going on here. And the regulations and the authors make reference to this in the text, that there is either disguised compensation or a gift to C, and this is spelled out in regulation 704-1B2, 4 little i's, F. I'll repeat, 704-1B2, 4 little i's, F. That if there is not an adjustment in the book account of these partners, then there is something else going on, okay? Period. There's some hidden agenda. So I don't want to belabor this point. What is the point of problem 3? Problem 3 is just to illustrate that these principles also extend to when a new partner comes on board, okay? So problem 1 reflects when partners contribute property with a built-in gain. Problem 3 reflects when there's an existing partnership and a new partner comes in, and these same principles have to apply. Now let's talk about problem 2. Let's go back to page 180. Now, with respect to page 180, you're going to have a situation where partners are going to contribute property, depreciable property, right? And the basis of the property may be less than the fair market value. The basis of the property may be less than fair market value. Or the basis of the property may be more than fair market value, right? So if in the first scenario, if the basis is less than fair market value, guess what? If I start a partnership with Tom, and Tom contributes $10,000 cash, and solely contributes property worth $10,000 with a basis of, say, $6,000. Everyone got the visual? I contribute property with a basis of 6 worth 10. Economically, we're going to be equal, right, Tom? 50-50. In Tom's perfect world, Solo would have contributed property. I would have contributed $10,000 cash, and had I done that, we would have used that $10,000 cash that I contributed to buy property, right? Depreciable, say 1231 property, and we would have commanded depreciation deductions equal to whatever $10,000 of property we bought, right? But now, it's not really fair to Tom. I brought to the equation property worth $10,000, but with a basis of only $6,000, we're not going to get the same depreciation deductions, right? Who should suffer the consequences of that, Tom or Solon? Clearly Solon. Tom wants his fair share, and rightfully so. So if the depreciation deductions are, say, $500 for book depreciation, since it's $1,000 a year, and we're going to split that depreciation deduction $1,000 a piece, right, for book purposes. But the tax depreciation is only $600. Tom should get the $500 because he deserves it. Solon will only get $100 of depreciation deductions, okay? So in that scenario that I just described, with a basis of $6,000, fair market value of 10, Tom is going to get hit every dollar of depreciation he deserves, and another way of saying it, I will get my fair share, but it's going to be much less. I'm going to get whatever remains. And if I contribute property with only a $3,000 basis, worth $10,000, Tom may not be a happy camper because now, even though his book depreciation is $500, and my book depreciation is $500, there's only $300 worth of depreciation. So Tom is not going to get his full $300 worth of $500 worth of depreciation. He's only going to get $300. I may get $0. Tom, no offense to me, Tom couldn't care less about me, but he's kind of angry, right? Not just because he's drinking Angry Orchard, which you're not drinking, if you were. Okay, side joke. All right, but you get the point. Everyone get the point that you're limited, right? You're capped. We're seeing the ceiling rule in action again, right? Everyone, with depreciation, just like we saw with the sale rules, everybody got it? With the sale rules, we were capped. Similarly, those same sale rules could apply. Now, what happens if solely contributed property with a basis of $12,000, fair market value of $10,000? My coffee cup runneth over that, right? Because now we're going to get more depreciation deductions than otherwise we would be entitled to, right? Because had I contributed $10,000 of cash, there would have been a limit to how much depreciation, but now I contributed property with a higher basis than the fair market value. Who should get the extra depreciation deductions? Solid should, because hey, I'm the guy contributing the property. Tom shouldn't. Everyone agree? In that scenario, B.
It may seem like a stupid question, but isn't depreciation calculated on book value, not on adjusted basis?
It's both. You've got to do a depreciation, whatever method you use for book purposes, you've got to use for tax purposes. And there's two different numbers. Okay? So when you look during the course of this week, my point is there's different scenarios that will unfold. And guess what, guys? Just like we did with computing gains and losses for contributed property, for depreciation, what are we going to use here, guys? 3 different methods. We're going to have our traditional method with curative allocations, and remedial method. So we're going to have 3 different methods to compute possible depreciation deductions and how they're going to be allocated. Take a deep breath, because I'm going to warn you that the depreciation deductions, you know how we pulled numbers out of thin air for the sale? And it was, if you don't mind me saying, eloquent, I should say. Easy for me to say. Eloquent. We pulled numbers out and we said there was nice symmetry and all that. Everyone agree? That kind of neat, right? The same is not quite true when we use the remedial method for depreciation purposes. What we're going to see is that the regulations require you to hypothetically create 2 different assets. Okay? I know this is going to blow your mind, but you're going to actually create 2 different assets. The first asset is going to be equal to your original basis, and your second asset is going to be equal to the fair market value, the difference between the basis and the fair market value. So you're going to create kind of a funky outcome here, where you're going to have the equivalent of 2 different depreciation deductions. So I just want to give you a heads up, that's going to be the case. So I don't think it serves anyone's purposes here if we were to rush through problem 2, but I just want to point out that if you want to do yourself a service, beginning on page 180, they go through a traditional method. If you don't mind me saying, this is why, guys, this book is in the 11th edition. It is damn good. It just really spells it out in a nice, easy way to follow. And then on the bottom of page 181, you're going to get a taste of the traditional method with curative allocations. And then I'm going to point out on page 182, we're going to go through the remedial method, and in that first paragraph, they're going to talk about creating these 2 different assets. Okay? We're going to talk about the creation of these 2 different assets, and you're going to see how it applies. Now, one of our first tasks will be obviously finishing this, problem 2. But then, if you look at page 190, it talks about partner interest acquired by gift purchased from a family member. Remember, the code is very unnerved when family members do anything, right? Because there's a chance of collusion, right? Heavy chance of collusion. So that being the case, given that there's a heavy chance of collusion, because of that risk, there's going to be 7 special rules spelled out in Code Section 704E. Code Section 704E. So I just want you to be aware of it. Now, what we will do is, I'm going to try to be very quick about my summary next Wednesday. But then, beginning on page 199, partnership liabilities. Ta-da! You've been waiting for this moment. We're at chapter 2. We had a very simplified version of partnership liabilities. Chapter 6, we will go in and finally take a deep dive into partnership liabilities. Right? So I have every expectation of finishing Chapter 6 for next class, and if time permits, we'll see if it does, getting up to page 237. Okay? So for your reading for next class, if you could read up to 237, it would be great. We will certainly finish Chapter 6. How far we get in Chapter 7 is a question mark. All right? So good luck with the material. Have a good night. And good luck studying. Those on WebEx, have a good night, everyone who's on WebEx. I would say get home safely, but I would imagine many of you